Hey, welcome to Book Mob episode 55, first episode of 2025. Today I'm just going to be talking about Philip K. Dick's The Penultimate Truth. Now, the reason I picked this book, first of all, it's the first book I've read in 2025, and it was such an interesting read that I couldn't help but want to talk about it, because The Penultimate Truth is about the massive structures required for an elite group of people to somehow fool billions of people into thinking of how the world is, not how the world they think it is. In the book, it's the Third World War has taken place in a nuclear apocalypse, and the war was meant to end all life on the planet. However, due to circumstances, the war itself finished quite quickly. And before the war started, everyone ran away and was put into little ant farms, or what they call ant tanks. So all over the world, there are thousands of these underground cities where people are going to be sitting out the Third World War. However, once the war finished, a group of people on the surface decided, let's not tell the rest of the world that the war has finished. So the whole book is about a small group of elites who control the world and live like barons on their thiefdoms up on the surface of the earth, and used by media and great propaganda. They basically lie to the millions of people who survived the war underground. Now, the task of the people underground is to keep them motivated, to keep them working, is that they have been told to produce robots in order to continue the war. So each ant tank has to produce a certain amount of robots that they send up to the surface, and according to them, they continue to fight the war. Now, on the surface, the elites are run by one individual, but out of that individual, the Yancmen, Y-A-N-C-E-M-E-N, are individuals whose sole job is to live in their luxury of their fiefdoms on the roof of the world, but also to create the propaganda that continues to keep the mass of humanity blinded to the truth that the war is over, and that in fact majority of the earth is livable, but because of resources, because of greed, and because of power, this small group of people have formed a cabal, and they just basically keep the people in the dark under the ground. Now, the novel is about occasionally people from under the ground will decide to to risk death and come to the surface, to collect tools and, just basically see what's going on the surface. Now, when these people come up, they are generally killed by robots who guard the doorways and the exits of the ant tanks. So there's people who go up never come back. So everyone assumes, well, obviously they didn't make it, that they were killed on the surface by radiation or by the ongoing war. However, some people in these ant tanks decide there's got to be something else going on, so they build and they tunnel out of the ant tanks in other parts where traditionally there weren't doors. And some of these people actually do survive, but they find out what's going on in the world and that they can't go back to the ant tanks, and so they're stuck in a limbo between them being cave dwellers and new people on the planet of the earth. And it's quite an amazing story about how easy, because it is easy to make people wait for news from the... Yeah, so people who have left the ant tanks, they are on the surface and there is nowhere for them to go. And every year, more and more people are discovering that the outside world is not the world they have been led to believe exists. However, the majority of people are still under the impression that they are building robots and fighting the Third World War. So it's a fascinating look about how the media, through propaganda, through facts, through artificial vision, there's a whole sort of nature of people who create documentaries to send down to the people in the ant tanks in order to keep them in ignorance as to what is going on. And I do think it makes, this book was written in 1964, and it was originally a short story that Philip K. Dick had written in the 50s called The Defenders. So in 1964, you can imagine Philip K. Dick again is looking to the future. He sees in his own world, his own political world in the 60s, JFK had just been shot, the Bay of Pigs had taken place, the Vietnam War was grinding up, and all of that basically was supported by the media and by a few people who are in positions of power, and they have so much power that they can influence truth, they can influence facts, they can influence culture and the politics of the day. So you can imagine that Philip K. Dick is basically saying there is no actual truth. The truth lies and is held by those in power. And they can stream, they can create worlds, universes, ideas, philosophies, ideologies in their own good time. And in the Penultimate Truth, this is taken to the highest degree because obviously thousands upon, millions of people all over the world who are living in these ant tanks with no idea that their brutal lives are basically being made worse and kept in the dark because of a minority of people who have decided to take it upon themselves to live on the planet of the earth, reap all the rewards, all the fruits, live like kings, and basically make sure that the world never returns to the populated place that it once was. Now, however, obviously, the story does involve people coming out of these ant tanks and integrating themselves into society in one way or the other. So the story, I won't go into the actual story to say that it's worth reading because it's an enjoyable, entertaining political read, and it really does hit home with the idea that people are easily swayed by media. People are easily swayed by so-called facts. And I guess that, that whole idea of fake news has been around, for centuries, really. It is the powerful and those with influence who do create the narratives in which people live the majority of their life. They just live in the shadow of what someone else is telling them to do. And when you've got 5 million people following, a couple of ideas, it's very challenging and very difficult for the individual to fight against that. And I think that's where majority of today's media is getting into itself into a twisted Gordian knot, because even though you have the internet and with all the so-called freedom of speech and that, it is still curtailed, it is still controlled. And even recently, as last week, people, what was his name? The guy who invented Facebook. I can't remember his name. Not Bill Gates, but he's one of the cabal. Mark Zuckerberg, he suddenly comes out and he says, yeah, look, I was told to do this. I was told to say that in the last 4 years, and it was wrong. And yet, if you look at what he did and how he controlled the narrative of so many aspects of our society, that we now just think about it and go, oh, well, okay, well, he did that. But we're just lucky, we're just fortunate that it didn't get any worse. And of course, this doesn't mean it's not going to get any worse. So that the Philip K. Dick, as usual, was way ahead of time. He was coming up with great ideas and trying to get people to listen, trying to get people to live for themselves. I guess he was a libertarian, possibly an anarchist at heart. However, he did get a message across from 1964 that manages to resonate in 2025, which I find is fascinating. Now, the book, as usual, when you read Philip K. Dick, great stories, sort of a jumble of characters. His language is also a bit hopscotch, and it's not reading Philip K. Dick is not an easy read. They're entertaining, but you do find yourself struggling sometimes through his language and his plots. However, I always stick with him because it's his essential ideas that make his books such phenomenal prophecies, because he's been dealing with the future in the past for the majority of his books. And you can obviously, if you look up Philip K. Dick, you'll be surprised by how many Hollywood films have been made due to his work. So I'm just saying that The Penultimate Truth by Philip K. Dick, written in 1964, is a powerful and enjoyable political novel that is highly recommend it for anyone who wants to be a student of politics and propaganda. What is going on in one place of the world is we only knew this through the view or the television or the internet or magazines or newspapers, and that doesn't mean anything because it's still controlled by a few limited sources. And our idea of the future, our idea of the present, our own ideological ideas will always be in conflict with the reality of situations when they do become exposed, which does happen every now and again. But even then, even the exposure of the cabals who are trying to create stories for us to live by, even once we find out, we kind of let it go. We kind of just move on to the next thing. And then the next surprising story, we just believe, because the government says it, because the media says it, because this person has done this. So we are always going to be fighting a losing battle against the truth tellers, whoever the hell they may be. Your own truth is your own truth in your day-to-day life. But I guess if you look at things like, even ridiculous things like inflation, if we're told inflation is going to set prices high, prices go up. And for some reason there's no actual, you don't actually go into the ring. How come people are putting prices up? Oh, inflation. Oh, okay. So it's people, we're almost told how to live. And Philip K. Dick just creates a great story where you as an individual can somehow get a bit of revenge and have a look and peer into the ugliness of power, the ugliness of control, and how people in power are so desperate to hold on to it. They don't want to let it go. And they will do anything and everything in order to maintain that control and power. So it's a fascinating book. I highly recommend it. Entertaining, a fun read. I've just skidded over the surface of it. There's a lot more to the Penultimate Truth than what I've just mentioned. And I would certainly this is from the Sci-Fi Masterworks collection, which you can get in almost any bookstore. And it's a really, really fascinating read. And again, thanks to Philip K. Dick. It was marvelous. And before I go, I just finished Raymond Chandler's The High Window, and I'm going to be reading another Chandler in the next week, The Lady in the Lake. And I also finished Alfred Bester, The Stars of My Destination, another SF Masterworks. So reading is piling up already in 2025, and hopefully I'll be able to let you know that next week I hope to be talking to Ian Backhouse, whose latest novel, Whisper a Prayer, is being released. I wrote a review. You can check out my Goodreads review of Ian Backhouse's latest novel. So I'm going to be talking to him sometime in the next week, and I'll have that up hopefully by next weekend for the next episode of Book Mob. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you'll stay around and check out my Ian Backhouse Whisper a Prayer for our interview in the coming week. All right, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you in the bookstore.